don't expect you're gonna feel my way, but you don't know the trees that were there before, and now I want them to put back that old corner store. I walked past just like I say, and I felt a hurt that would not go home. I don't expect you're gonna see my way, but you may not know the trees I've known, and I want them to put back that corner store. We're gonna rock it.
Hey folks, welcome to the first installment of the Berlin Store History Tour, an online historical tour of the grocery and convenience stores of Berlin, New Hampshire. This series is brought to you by the Androscoggin Food Co-op, and tonight our first episode is going to feature the neighborhoods of the East Side and Forbush Park. My name is Shawn Marquis. I'm a native of Berlin. I graduated from Berlin High School in 1992, moved to the Boston area for 25 years, and 3 years ago just happily moved back to Berlin. I'm passionate both about the history and the future of Berlin, and this history project is something I'd been wanting to do for a long time, so I'm really happy to share it with you. I grew up in the Norwegian Village, and we had corner stores such as C&C's Variety, Berlin Mills Variety, and Russ Olsen's Variety. And when I think back to my memories of those places, they really just weren't places where I would buy penny candy or where my parents would pick up a paper and some milk. They were hubs of community. When I think about the characters that were walking in and out of these places and my experience of just being there, it really brings a warm feeling across my heart. And, I appreciate what they stood for in our community. While many of these stores are gone, the people who made up the communities around these businesses and in these neighborhoods some are still here. Some still live in town, some have moved away, and perhaps many of you watching this evening were part of one of those neighborhoods and communities. Or maybe you're a newcomer coming to Berlin and you're going to soon realize that this building right down the street from you at one point was a totally lively place where commerce happened and folks congregated. My hope is that by taking a walk through this aspect of Berlin's history together, you'll find some memories come up and you'll feel that warmth come back to you. And perhaps we can even channel that energy towards the Berlin that is being born. Just to talk a little bit about the project, I'm aiming for this to be a comprehensive document. I don't necessarily think I'm completely there yet in terms of this particular neighborhood. It's not going to be perfect, so there will be some omissions, there will be some information that might be incorrect, but it's very much a living document. So if you notice something along the way here, please take note and drop me a line. One of the great things about this project is the connections that I've made and talked with different folks, reminiscing and gathering information about these businesses. I'll be presenting the series one neighborhood at a time, because you'll see that some of these neighborhoods had tons of stores in them, and if I were to do the whole city in one go, we'd be here all night. In addition to the videos, you'll see that I built the presentation in a service called Google Atlas Tours, and the idea is that once I complete the entire city, folks will be able to come to Google Atlas and take the tour themselves, just clicking around and also seeing the supporting information for each of the businesses that I spotlight. All right, so let's jump right into it here. What you're looking at is an overview of the East Side and Forbush Park. Note that I'm not including Naper Village as a part of the East Side. I'm going to couple that with Liberty Park and the Norwegian Village session, which will be actually my next presentation, partly because you could see there are 22 different locations here just in these two neighborhoods. which makes sense given that you could see the mill area at the top of the map. And you can imagine mill workers clocking out and walking home and being able to hit up one of these stores before getting back to the house. So it was a really smart place for folks to open up a business, given the foot traffic that would have been pouring through the neighborhood at 5:30. And a lot of these locations were multiple entities over time. Most of them now are private residences, and I'll show you how they look today as a part of this tour. And I think it's possible that somebody could develop a bit of a sad narrative seeing the shape of some of these places now and the shape of the city. But just note that this is a city in transition. We were the shining star of New England for a really long time. And as the saying goes, all things must pass. The old world has broken down, and the Berlin area is now a blank slate. We get to reinvent it. We get to create something new with it. Berlin 2.0. I very much think that the sponsors of this series, the Androscoggin Food Co-op, are a big part of that new world in terms of gathering a community of folks together to create something in the area, namely a grocery store, and stocking it and sourcing the goods in this store from farmers, local farmers, and local producers to support them and just strengthening the fiber of our community and strengthening the our food source. So let's head to our first stop here on the tour. I was really excited to find photos of this place. I may have only walked in there a handful of times, but this is the former location of Russo's IGA on Coas Street. I can show you here. You can see Mount Forest in the background, and here's a looking up Coas Street. This shop was owned by Norman and Lucille Russo. I spoke with their daughter, Michelle Russo, who began work at the store when she was 12 years old, and she was able to provide a little bit of color of what it was like inside. It was a full-service grocery store. They had a deli counter. They did meat butchering in-house, and Norman was said to be an excellent butcher. He began when he was 15 years old. Folks who would be local hunters who would, shoot a deer would bring it to Norman, bring it out back, and he would go through and butcher the entire animal and process it for them while everybody hung out. They sold products from Canada. They prepared lunches for the National Guard when they went out on their runs or their missions. And they actually had their own brand of sausage, which was called Norm's Sausage, said to rival Blanchette's. Never tried it. I spoke with a gentleman by the name of Rick Buteau, who was a stock boy from 1982 to 1984, and he had some really kind words to say about Norm. This is a quote from him. "Norm was my first boss, and his family was amazing. Norm taught me work ethics that I used my entire life. He was a great butcher. I met Norm every Thursday morning at 4:30 a.m. to unload the delivery truck of groceries for the week, and then he'd take me for breakfast before I'd go to school." Rick also talked a little bit about, he was the one who clued me into how a lot of these stores in the area had back rooms, and they were really like social clubs in a way. The men would hang out and enjoy a GIQ, and if anybody doesn't know that term, it means Giant Imperial Quart. It's 32 ounces of beer. Narragansett being a very famous version of that. I guess that was a favorite over at Russo's Market. But the gents would hang out and have a drink back there while the ladies shopped and picked up the groceries for the week. They also delivered groceries, and this was a really interesting story to me in that, and this is of days gone by, but they had a couple of delivery drivers. One's Bob LaRue, another one is Roland Goulet. And not only would they drive the groceries to your house, but in some cases they'd walk in your house and put the groceries away for you in your cupboards. I imagine that's something that happened with elderly folks, but I just thought that was an amazing service and something that has surely gone by the way as time has passed. As I said, the store was sold in 1985 or 1986, and it never reopened. I think for a short time it was a sandwich store. Now, if we go around the corner here behind Russo's IGA, This was the actual initial location of the store. It went by the name of Marwa Grocery, and it was opened by Diana Marwa. Now, Diana's daughter married a Russo, and that's really where the name took off. They kind of outgrew this building here, and they went ahead and built the building on the corner, which had some apartments up above as well. But this was not only where the Russo name went. Norman's brother, Ovala, also bought this location where the Save-A-Lot food store was at one point. And this was the Mountain Valley IGA. This was purchased on September 28th, 1977. And as I said, it was operated by Norman's brother, Ovala, who's pictured here in this photograph. I think Russo's warehouse was a section of the Mountain Valley IGA where all the bulk goods were. You could just grab a whole box of whatever it was you're looking for and check out. I remember it being a beautiful store. It had this large green awning in the front, and they have him as Oliva here. I think that's a misprint. I'm pretty sure it's Ovala Russo. But the store was beautiful. I always appreciated going there and getting groceries. And so they not only had this location, but they also had bought what was once the Prince's Food Liner, which is now located at what we know as the Berlin Marketplace, which is owned by Steve Tardif. So this was bought on December 31st, 1979. And between this location and the location in Gorham, the Russo family served 11,000 people weekly. They employed 100 folks, and they were actually the third largest employer in the area. The Russo grocery brand, it was actually traded on Wall Street, and they were written up in Forbes magazine for their efforts, for what they've done. So let's head back over to the neighborhood here. And we're going to stop here. Some of these locations I don't have a lot of information on. So if you have any info, by all means, please reach out and let me know. This was the location of Sil Morissette's store. Again, give you a little bit of context in terms of where we are. Don't know too much about this place. Like I said, I managed to find a little ad here in one of the yearbooks, the Berlin High yearbooks. But yes, I was told Sil Morissette operated this place. And then right down the street, this place is still a retail outfit. This was the originally called Alphonse Crotto grocery store. I managed to find a photo here of folks gathered out front, looking quite merry. And this location is now Tech Pros, where they sell guns in it, and I believe they also do computer repairs. Now, this next location, most people definitely know. Now the site of Sinibaldi's in the Mill Yard, but at one point this was Blanchette's brother's grocery store. You could see Blanchette there in the right-hand side. And Sinibaldi's got a good, cool, old-fashioned font going on over the door here. Now, Blanchette's is the home of the famous Blanchette sausage, which actually was originally called Holly's sausage. This was actually, Blanchette's was originally owned by the Hawley family, Halle, and the Blanchette's took it over. I have, fortunately, a little video clip here that I can show you of what it looked like back in 1951. And that's the front of the awning where it's all walled off right now. You'd be basically walking into the mill yard by walking into that entrance. And I love this scene. Look at how much these wooden crates are being stacked into the Blanchette brothers' truck. I'm assuming that these are deliveries being made. And you'd think, seeing how they're piled up on the tailgate, that maybe that's enough for this load and they can go deliver them. But no, you're going to see more of these huge boxes come out, and they just start stacking them on the roof. I'm guessing they moved along at a slower clip, but boy, they were doing some good business. It looks like here. Now, as the truck takes off, you can see very quickly in the left-hand corner a market. You can see the awning right there. I believe that's Babe's, which we'll cover a little later on. Okay, so moving back to the slides here. Here is an ad for Holly's Market, which would have been the predecessor, like I mentioned, of Blanchette's. Now, as a point of information for any of you out there who are entrepreneurial in spirit, I was speaking with Roxanne Doobie, the owner of the Mill Yard in Sinibaldi's, and we were talking about Blanchette's sausage. And she was telling me they sell about 300 to 400 pounds of Blanchette's sausage a week, which is incredible. And maybe some of you folks are aware of Rudy's Market over on White Street, which is currently for sale and is known to have the best meat in the city. It is such a hot spot for their butcher work and for their meat products. And Roxanne had a really bright idea that if somebody was really kind of keen and looking to build a almost surefire bulletproof business, somebody could buy Rudy's Market and then buy the recipe for Blanchette's sausage, which is for sale, and really kind of corner the market in terms of meat products in this city. Now, just around the corner, there was another Blanchette family, unrelated to the Blanchette brothers, who operated a business in the lower left-hand corner of this unit, which was called Delphus Grocery, or Dell's Grocery. I believe it was also maybe known as Blanchette's to some people. And you could see there's the Angel Guardian here. And then across the street is Blanchette's Garage, which is still in operation today. And I got to speak with Claude Blanchette and to learn a little bit about his grandfather Delphus and the operation that they ran. And he was telling me that behind the silver van here in the photo in the office was actually a barber shop. And Delphus would cut hair and cars would pull in to get gas pumped from the pumps that were there at one point. And so he'd stop mid-haircut, jump out, fill up the car, jump back in and get back on the scissors. And I can't help but to think that some of those pompadour haircuts from back in the day benefited from a little bit of unleaded. Across the street, his wife would sometimes come out on the porch and wave a rag in the air to get his attention whenever there was some butchering that needed to be done. So Delphus would run over whenever there was a little deli work required. And I think it just goes to the testament of how people wore so many hats back in the day to make a living. So that's Dell's Grocery for you. Now we're going to move to another location which is near and dear to my heart. This is the former location of Sam's Variety. It was also at one point known as Lorette's, also known as Elmer DeRozier and F. Crotto's. I believe all those locations were staged in the house pictured here. For me, I can remember coming from my Little League baseball games at Community Field, which was right down the street here. This area has been all kind of reshaped over the years, but you could see the mill here, and then down at the bottom would be Community Field. But I remember all of us players would head up here and get a big old slush, whether we won or lost. We were either crying in our slushies or we're celebrating with them. But this existed, I believe, into the 80s. And like I said, was kind of a hot spot for folks who were coming from Community Field. So now we'll move over to Grafton Street, which seemed to be a hot spot for variety stores and grocery stores back in the day. There were a number in this area, beginning here with Peliquin's, which was located, I believe, in this double garage here. Just giving you a quick view here of Grafton Street. There's King's School, which is now a thrift shop. I think they're calling it the Angel Guardian thrift shop these days. But I found an ad here out of an old yearbook. I think they're congratulating the class of 1958 here. I'd love to see the old French, the franglais, being exercised here. but they sold meat and groceries in this location here. And again, I don't have too much information on it. It was operated by Ferdinand Peliquin, and I don't think I had ever seen it in operation, so it must have been closed down quite a while ago. So now moving down the street, and a location that I do remember seeing was King's Market. Again, where the double garage here exists, I believe that's where the store was. And I remember a really large lit up sign that spanned across the top of the garage. And I remember the font being very big, saying Kings. The only thing I know about them is that they sold propane, which I imagine would have been what folks might have heated their houses and apartments with back in the day. And again, it was this was run by E.J. King, and they sold meats and groceries, fruits and vegetables, it looks like. Moving along here, this location was a number of different things. I found an ad here for a Morissette Brothers ad, which suggested that they had a couple of different locations, one on Willard Street, and then this one at 152 Grafton. Choice staple and fancy groceries, fresh and salt meats, fish and seafoods, fruits and vegetables. But it was also Antoine Babin as well, was at this same location. I imagine that was much earlier. Not so much, I don't really have a great deal more information on this location. And then right next door, the building is no longer there. I found a listing for another location related to Eastside Cash Market, which I believe was on the corner of Hillsborough. They listed at 140 Grafton. I'm imagining that the building is gone here. From the best that I can determine, this is where 140 Grafton was. It was owned by Oreste Mosca, who also operated Mosca's Market on East Mason. So let's now move right around the corner here and look at Mosca's Market. This is a location probably people are pretty familiar with. This was the old Pisani's family restaurant. This was also a game room, Pisani's game room. At the time when this was actually a grocery store, it was 3 stories tall. Fire took the first story, and then another fire took the second story, so they took it down to 1 by the time that the restaurant was in operation. It was actually, the building was half hardware store and half grocery store. And there was a really great memoir that I found written by a gentleman named Ralph Memelo, where he documents his family's emigration from Italy to Berlin, New Hampshire. And it's kind of funny and interesting because I'm sure this has probably happened in many instances where there might have been a language barrier, but Ralph's grandparents got into Ellis Island off the boat from Italy, and they told immigration that they wanted to go to Berlin, and they meant Berlin, Connecticut. And so the person who was triaging all these folks coming in put them on a train to Berlin, New Hampshire, and lo and behold, they ended up in Berlin, New Hampshire, and the rest is history. They built their life here. They left Sora, Italy in 1905, and this account that they've given of their life is beautiful in terms of describing how colorful life on the east side was, specifically in this neighborhood here. They lived on Goebel Street, and they talk a lot about the businesses that dotted all the way up East Mason in the accounts from the 1920s. It's kind of an interesting fact that Mr. Pisani, his pop who ran this place, Felix Pisani, he was from Sora, Italy, and Ralph Memelo's grandparents were from Sora, Italy. So I don't know if there was kind of word going back there that Berlin's a great place to live, or if it was by chance, but that was kind of an interesting fact as I was doing a bit of research. The article or the collection of stories that Ralph Memelo wrote are really worth checking out. If you're interested in Berlin history at all, you could probably see a little bit from the screenshot here that I've included some of the the story in the description here, and I'll include a link to the entire to the entire site that houses all of those stories in case you'd want to check it out. But I thought maybe I would read a little bit just to give you a flavor of what it's like. So Ralph's grandparents, in describing the area back in the 20s, wrote, "Until there was widespread ownership of automobiles, the neighborhoods where these people lived also contained a variety of businesses, particularly grocery stores. When I was a boy, there were, in addition to Mosca's Market, similar stores on several street corners within a few blocks of Mosca's. There were stores like Morissette's and Blanchette Brothers that were not only fully stocked with groceries, but that also employed a number of clerks, including meat cutters, and like Mosca's, offered delivery service, and most important, credit. In addition, on any given block, there might be a number of mom-and-pop stores that existed primarily to sell soda and candy to kids and cigarettes and beer to adults. Mosca's, of course, was much more than a grocery store. The store was located across from the Boston and Maine Railroad station and close by the railroad's freight warehouse, at a time when the railroad functioned as the city's main contact with the outside world. Mosca's occupied a site that was one of the busiest corners in Berlin. That in itself meant that Mosca's was a crossroads, a meeting place of sorts, and even more important than that, Mosca's was a store where steady customers could get credit." So when you think about the railroad in the Eastern Depot being here behind these bushes, and this being kind of a primary lifeline of culture coming into the Berlin area from the city, this was really quite a prime location to have a store of any sort. It was owned by Orest Mosca. I don't know if I had mentioned that earlier, and I'm not sure if it's him or his son or somebody related, but there's another Orest Mosca who married a woman who went by the name of Tony, which I've now recently realized that this is the Tony that had the namesake of Tony's Pizza. I had always thought Tony was a gentleman, but sure enough, Tony was Tony Mosca, and it's kind of timely to mention this now because unfortunately it was just this past summer that Tony's Pizza closed after quite a long run. So again, check out that link if you're interested in learning a little bit more of what it was like to live in this area back in the day, and I guarantee you it'll be a great read. So let's slide up the road here from Mosca's to a location that folks frequently named when I was researching this project. Here in this empty lot once stood Babe's Market. Babe's was run by L.J. Terrio. Here's a receipt that I managed to find in my travels. But the most interesting story that I had found surrounding my research on Babe's was the major historical fire that took place in this area in 1972. There were huge, large apartment buildings. I'm not sure how many stories they were. I'm sure that they were at least 4. They could have been maybe up to 6. Maybe that's pushing it a little bit. But there was one right across the street in the yard in front of the White House pictured here. And then I believe there were also similar buildings in the parking lot here, which is now the parking lot for the ambulance service, and then also in Sinibaldi's parking lot where this red truck was. But all of these buildings caught fire in 1972, and folks who lived on the Burlingame Road at that time said they could see the tops of the flames all the way from there, which is incredible. And when the heating elements in each apartment exploded, they said they could see the huge plumes of flame going up into the sky. Unfortunately, 2 people had passed away, and there were 25 folks that were homeless from these fires. And the proprietor of Babe's Market had written a letter in the Berlin Reporter that I had found talking about trying to clear up some confusion around the food vouchers that were given to those folks to use in the markets. And they said that the access to the street was blocked for a number of days and the phones were out for quite a while as well. So it was a very, very significant event that took place in this area. Moving on, Hugh's Market was right across the street in that area that I'm talking about in front of the White House here in that yard. I don't have too much information on them. I did find a little ad you can see in the right-hand corner here. All that I know about them is that they had the biggest ice cream in town, which who wouldn't want to be known for that? So moving down the street, one of my later finds as part of the project, which I don't have a whole lot of information on, is this location that went by the name of A.N. McCready. Dealt with meats and groceries over here on Champlain Street. Again, not so much info on them, but you could see how there would be a store here at one point. What I like about this picture is this barn in the background. I always get fascinated of thinking, like, where are the oldest buildings in Berlin? Where are they still standing? I don't know any history about this brown barn in the background, but boy, it definitely looks like old world Berlin to me. This next building hosted a number of different businesses in it. It was known as Swatsky's, it was known as Morneau's, and then also Hamel's Convenience. I know that Swatsky's was run by Irene Swatsky, and when it was run as Hamel's Convenience, this gentleman here, second from the left, is Lawrence Hamel. He was a part of the Berlin Maroons when they won the New England AAU championship at the Boston Garden back in, I believe this was 1941 New England championship. So a little bit of background there on Lawrence Hamel. Good looking dude. Beyond that, don't know so much about the place. So if anybody's got any info, I'd love to hear about it. It's here on Burgess Street. Moving on, another location I don't know too much about and was another late find is this building, which I'm assuming that the bottom right unit was where the store existed. This was Albin LeBlanc, high-grade grocer, fruits and vegetables, cigars, tobacco, confectionery. We sell the best there is, it says here on the ad. Again, this is on Burgess Street. Don't know what street that is on the corner of. But again, if anybody has any information about it, would love to know. Moving further up Burgess, I feel like this place might have existed into the late 70s or early 80s. Obviously, the building isn't here anymore. Alphonse Thalen Meats and Groceries, 376 Burgess. I remember this as being a white building with large panes of glass in the front, and I can remember a sign over the front. I'm sure it wasn't Alphonse Thalen's at the time that I had seen it. It must have been named something else, but I've not found any other information to confirm that. So moving down to Goebel Street, another location I have some familiarity with. This is the old location of Goebel Variety. This was run by my aunt and uncle, Roger Goyette and Rita Goyette, back in the 80s, and it looks pretty different than it does now, as does Goebel Street. But they were a typical convenience store, and they also delivered goods as well. So we're now winding into the last few stores here on our tour, and we're going to go around the corner to a location that I really appreciate, although I don't think I had ever been in it. There was a 3-story building that once stood here, which housed the likes of Morissette's Food Mart, I believe the East Side Market, and also the Berlin Co-op. I had no idea that there was a co-op that existed at one point back in the day in Berlin. In later years, this building was home to a business run by Charlie Haggart called Sport About Charlie's. And I have a few photos that I believe are of Morissette's other location, but you could at least get a little bit of an idea of how they outfitted their shops. Take a little step back in time here. Who remembers unlatching these coolers to get your frozen treats out of the cold? And here's an ad for Morissette's Food Mart. Quite some prices there. And lastly, here's an ad for the Berlin Area Consumer Cooperative. Progress through people. Totally love that slogan. Get some residents from a community together around a common aim and just make it happen. It's very much what the Androscoggin Food Co-op is all about. So now heading back towards the river, one other location, which was kind of late breaking for me in this project when researching these neighborhoods. I had always heard about there being a store at the end of the East Mason Street bridge leading into Community Field. And sure enough, it looks pretty unsuspecting that you would ever think that there was a store here. But I did find a photograph which confirmed there was a store. This is the PJ Marquis confectionery. You can see it here where the Jacobs Insurance sign is. The building to the left is the railroad building that was referred to when we were talking about Mosca's Market. And I actually have a photo of PJ Marquis standing proudly in front of his store, which looks like maybe he's on a dirt road at this point, a dirt street. And I think in the background, I believe you could see with the kind of triangle top in the very right-hand side of the picture, I think that would have been Mosca's Market. But sure enough, here at the end of the East Mason Street Bridge, there was a store. And lastly, completing our little tour today, we come to the Big Apple. This is the only standing store out of all of the 22 that were in this area. It's owned by an energy company called CN Brown, which is situated in South Paris, Maine. They have 76 locations across Maine and New Hampshire, and they own service stations, heating oil offices, and gasoline dealers. I did manage to find a photo of it being constructed back in the day, which I'm guessing might have been the 80s or maybe late 70s. But that is the final store that's standing, and unfortunately it is not locally owned. So that concludes our tour of the grocery stores and convenience stores of the East Side and Forbush Park. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please share it with your friends. If you're appreciative of the work that I've done here, consider becoming a member of the Androscoggin Food Co-op. A one-time fee makes you a part owner of a grocery store, of our own grocery store that sources products from local farmers and local producers to bolster our food security and give us all access to great nutritious food. I'd like to give out some thanks to the Berlin Historical Society, in particular Walter Netto, who is very helpful in sourcing information for this presentation. The work of Puff Tardif. Man, what a gem we had in that city with the work that he's done. Through his stories, I've been able to source lots of information as well. Laura Jackson and the residents of the Notre Dame Apartments, and the countless kind folks on Facebook who have all provided information to help enrich this whole project. The next neighborhood presentation is going to be the Norwegian Village, Naper Village, and Liberty Park. So if you have any information about the stores in that area, even if it's the smallest story to provide a little bit of color, it would be so helpful. And I would love to especially hear from you if you have photographs or any sort of souvenirs or video of those locations. It would be great to connect, and you can do so by using the email address in the description. Thank you so much, and here is a quick word from the Androscoggin Food Co-op.
Hi, Peter Higbee here for the Androscoggin Food Co-op. We're proud to sponsor Shawn Marquis' fascinating look back at the many community-owned grocery stores that once were part of our Androscoggin Valley neighborhoods. In fact, we think it's time to return to the idea of the community-owned grocery store. But instead of having several small stores owned by a few families, our plan is to create one full-sized, full-service grocery store that will be owned by hundreds of local folks, including me, you, and our friends and neighbors. It'll be a store where you can get fresh, locally and regionally grown produce. A store that works with farmers and suppliers to give them a better deal by selling more directly to consumers, and a store where good jobs and happy employees help to build the local economy by keeping your food shopping dollars local. If this sounds good to you, we hope you will join us as we create the community-owned grocery store of the future, the Androscoggin Food Co-op. You can get more information and even become a member, owner, right on our website, androfood.coop. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
I've known, and I want them to put back that corner store, we're gonna rock it. Well,